Hey, folks. Today's episode is brought to you by my favorite sponsor, sunsetlakesebede.com. Use the code LEFTISBEST and you will get 20% off. What will you get 20% off? You'll get 20% off all the tinctures. They've got it in like 3 or 4 different concentrations, up to 6,000 meg. They have it in 3 different meg. Yeah.
Milligrams?
Milligrams, thank you.
Yeah.
They've got it in 3 different flavors. They've got it with melatonin. It's great to relax. It's great to help you sleep. I even put a drop or 2 in my hair sometimes.
Oh, wow.
That's what I'm starting to do. Yep.
That's the secret.
It is a secret, ladies and gentlemen. Don't tell anybody. But also, they've got Sebede coffee and Sebede fudge. They have smokables. They have keef that you can use in conjunction with other things that you might smoke or just alone as a little like after dinner relaxation. Of course, you should be over the age of 21. But also on top of that, they've got, I think, like pet treats, and they've got salve, a couple of different salves, one with arnica, one with lidocaine. Great for your sore muscles. I happen to use it for my eczema, and I find it quite effective. And also bug bites.
Oh,
I worked on my kids. But folks, it's a great product. They're a great company. They use all the best agriculture methods, integrated pest management. That means no pesticides. They use regenerative farming practices, so they take care of the land. And you get third-party analysis of everything you buy. You can see exactly the different elements that are in there. They also have great business practices, $20 minimum wage. They're mostly employee-owned company, and they are movement partners. They have donated thousands of dollars to things like strike funds and refugee resettlement and helping folks out after the Vermont floods, carceral reform, give directly. I mean, literally tens of thousands of dollars. They're great folks. It's a great product. sunsetlakesebede.com. Longtime fans of the show. Left is Best is their coupon code for 20% off. Check it out right now. Their salves have all been reduced in price. So if you haven't been there in a while, check it now. Now is a great time to go. And speaking of which, let's start the show.
The Majority Report with Sam Seder, where every day is Casual Friday. That means Monday is Casual Monday. Tuesday, Casual Tuesday. Wednesday, Casual Hump Day. Thursday, Casual Thurs. That's what we call it. And Friday, Casual Shabbat. The Majority Report with Sam Seder.
It is Friday, September 22nd, 2023. My name is Sam Seder. This is the 5-time award-winning Majority Report. We are broadcasting live steps from the industrially ravaged Gowanus Canal in the heartland of America, downtown Brooklyn, USA. It's Casual Friday, folks, but we have a special guest this week in studio.
Whoa.
Which we never do. Matt Duss, Executive Vice President at the Center for International Policy, will be here. He's former Bernie Sanders foreign policy guy. Talk about all of the different things that are going on in foreign policy. And then after that, she won't be in studio. But Judy Gold will be here. Long-awaited return to give us an update on just how seething she is about Donald Trump. Also on the program today, sounds like somebody was getting way too close to the truth. Bob Menendez indicted again in a, honestly, what reads as a comically produced, a criminally comically, or comically criminal indictment.
Why are they persecuting New Jerseyans for just doing cosplay of mafiosos?
UAW announces 38 more strike locations against Stellantis, and GM. Ford not on the list for the time being. Republican House now a total crap show. That's according to Republican House members. And federal workers and many of the needy will be paying the price for it as we barrel towards this Republican government shutdown. Meanwhile, Clarence Thomas, yes, there's more. He secretly participated in Koch network donor events as a way of raising money for the Koch network.
Jesus.
WGA producers and producers meet for a third consecutive day. We'll see. $500,000 to regain Medicaid after massive state errors are found. The Biden administration via the CFPB to scrub medical debt from credit scores. You know what would be really good is to scrub medical debt.
Yeah.
Last August joins last June and July as Earth's hottest months in the 175 years of record keeping.
Records all over the place.
Biden administration provides work permits for 500,000 Venezuelan immigrants under temporary protected status as a record number of immigrants head for the U.S. southern border. And lastly, Project Veritas Interruptus, as James O'Keefe's former shop collapses. All this and more on today's Majority Report. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. It is Casual Friday. Soft collared shirts. Emma Vigeland.
Sweater, baggy ass sweater. That's how I get casual.
It's like the Benetton stuff from like the 1980s.
I know. My arms look like they're 3 times the size of what they are. This is how I get swole. Hello.
I don't know what swole means. I honestly don't even know.
It just means strong and working out. And
didn't know that word.
Yeah.
Shredded.
Didn't know that word.
Shredded,
That must
right.
be a new word
Yeah.
because I never heard of it. Got a lot to get to today. Let's start with because we got Matt Duss is in town. So
Not only in town.
and he did not get the memo. It's Casual Friday. He's gonna take the jacket off. At 12 noon today, the UAW. They actually did it a little bit earlier because I think they had a sense. Sean Fain put out a Facebook Live video announcing that he is calling on 38 new UAW locations across 20 states to stand up and join the strike. Don't know how many more workers that adds. We're working on that. But I imagine it's this is just broke right before the beginning of the show.
It was 13,000 for the 3 locations before, right?
That's
right. So this is an escalation, which is awesome.
I mean, basic math would suggest yes, and those same 13,000 will stay on the picket lines. As of now, no Ford locations outside of that original Ford location is announced because apparently they are still in talks with Ford. Here's Sean Fain.
Our proposals to convert temps. So today at noon Eastern Time, all of the parts distribution facilities at General Motors and Stellantis are being called to stand up and strike. We will be striking 38 locations across 20 states, across all 9 regions of the UAW. At General Motors, we call on the CCAs at Pontiac, Willow Run, Ypsilanti, Davison Road, Flint, Lansing, Cincinnati, Denver, Hudson, Wisconsin, Chicago, Reno, Rancho Cucamonga, Fort Worth, Martinsburg, Jackson, Charlotte, Memphis, and Philadelphia to stand up and go on strike. At Stellantis, we call on the parts distribution centers at Marysville, Centerline Packaging, Centerline Warehouse, Sherwood, Warren Parts, Quality Engineering Center, Romulus, Cleveland, Milwaukee, Minneapolis, Denver, Chicago, Los Angeles, Portland, Atlanta, Winchester, Orlando, Dallas, New York, and Boston to stand up and go on strike.
There you have it. It's escalating, and it's going to be interesting to see what happens now, obviously, in terms of ramping up the pressure. There was some internal, I don't know how widespread it was, but there was some internal dissent about the strategy that Fain has been following, as one would expect. But he's been quite clear that, any proposal that they get, they've been very transparent about the negotiations. He's been quite clear that any proposal they get, he's not going to consider it legit until the membership votes on it. And I don't know. You can question, I guess, the strategy here or the tactics, but I don't remember this level of drama in a strike. And one of the things that happened with the producers and writers and actors strike is that there was an escalation when the actors came on. And this almost he's built this in. Mm-hmm. This continues to stay in the news. It's not one of those things where as it ramps up, I imagine there's a lot more opportunity for them to strike in the future in other locations. We will see. But if you're in any one of those cities and you have the ability to go down and just, I don't know, honk your horn, show some support for the UAW folks, do it. It really does make a difference when they're walking the line to feel like the community is supporting them. And polling so far has shown at least broad support.
3-1.
That's pretty good, regardless of party.
75% is a poll I saw.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah, and I mean, I've seen people should watch Sean Fain's streams too, because he does really. It's like a sort of a great demonstration of democracy, because he's actually talking to all these different people and the people who want to strike all at once. For instance, he's walking through this stuff in a very transparent manner. It's a really good demonstration of democracy.
And I also just wanted to note too that he in this stream, according to the ABC News write-up that I read about it, said that he invited Biden to the picket line at this point, which means there must have been discussions behind the scenes that Biden's going, or at least they're talking about it at the very least, because you made this point before the show, Sam, that Biden doesn't want to go and look like he's just doing it because Trump is going there during the debate next week. He wants to go if union members and leadership ask him to. An
invite really opens the door for him
Yes.
to show up there, and it's hard to imagine that they would have invited him without a sense that he's open to an invitation. But who knows? I guess we'll find out. In a moment, we'll be talking to Matt Duss. But before we do, this episode brought to you by Monokura Kora honey. This stuff got a workout over the past couple of weeks in my house. There was a lot of tea drank during our little COVID bout. We're all fine now. Just letting Matt know. But when you hear the word honey, you may be thinking of oh, okay, that stuff in the little bear bottle that I squeeze out. Or maybe you're thinking about, I don't know, maybe even honey you get down the road. This is something completely different. Monokura honey is Manuka honey, which is essentially I don't know how else to describe it. It's like a super honey, like an Uber honey that comes from New Zealand. The bees only feed on the nectar of the Manuka tea tree. And the honey is honestly, it's like nothing you've ever tasted before. It has a much creamier texture. It's almost like caramel. And it also has unique antioxidants and prebiotics, as well as a natural antibacterial compound called MGO that only comes from the nectar of this tea tree. And they actually have different sort of concentrations of that MGO. You can see it on the website. These nutrients support optimal immune and digestive health. So it's a win-win. You can use the honey like you normally do, and it tastes significantly better. And it actually provides like immune support to you. You can eat it straight out of the jar with a spoon. I, the other day, made some, like I had some overripe bananas, put them in the, chopped them up, put them in the freezer, a little bit of milk, a little bit of
sounds
Manakora honey, and it was like ice cream. But I used the heck out of it in providing tea for both Saul and I when we had COVID. He had a lot of it out of the jar. It really is amazingly delicious. If you head to manakora.com, I mean, it's special honey. It's super special honey. And we used a little bit also for Rosh Hashanah, the Happy New Year with the apple.
Yeah, Happy New Year.
Thank you. Manakora.com/majority. Use the code majority. You'll automatically get a free pack of 850 plus. Those are the, that's that MGO honey sticks with the order. It's a $15 value. Those honey sticks are amazing to drop in your kid's lunch. Or I guess you could take it with you if you're an adult as well. But for me, Saul gets all of them in his lunch bag. And they're compostable too, I should say, those honey sticks. That's Manakora, manukora.com/majority. Use the code majority to get a free pack of compostable honey sticks with your order. I'm telling you, you have not seen or tasted honey like this before. Indulge yourself. Try some honey with superpowers from Manakora. Also, today's program sponsored by Z-Biotics. This has come in very handy. I know, Emma, when you go to your weddings, you like to make sure that you're, I've been invited to far more funerals lately than weddings, but that's not really,
Oh, man.
that's not really a pitch for this. But the point is, if there's a night that I know that I'm going out and I'm going to have a few drinks, particularly the next day, I'm working, Z-Biotics pre-alcohol probiotic is what I take. It is the first genetically engineered probiotic. And now I don't have to choose between having a couple of drinks at night or having a functional day the next day. And here's how it works. When you drink, alcohol gets converted into a toxic byproduct in the gut. It's this byproduct, not dehydration, that makes you feel miserable the next day. And Z-Biotics, what you do is you take it. It's like it's like a little tiny shot bottle almost, and it produces an enzyme. It breaks this byproduct down. You drink it before you drink any alcohol. You drink responsibly. Try and get a good night's sleep. And then the next day, you want to work out, you can work out. You want to go to work and do your show, or even if you do other things for work, I imagine other people do. You feel great. I go over, sometimes I'll have a drink with my friend John occasionally. And now I don't have to worry about it if I want to have like a bourbon at night. I don't have to feel bad the next day. This Halloween, you can pair your candy and your cocktails with Z-Biotics, and you will avoid a spooky next day.
Woo.
Yep. No cobwebs in your head. Yeah. Go to zbiotics.com/majority. Get 15% off your first order when you use majority at checkout. You can also sign up for a subscription using my code so you can stay prepared no matter the time or occasion. That's actually a good idea because I've run out and then I forget and then I'm bummed and then I order it and rinse repeat. Without the subscription means you never forget. Z-Biotics is backed with a 100% money back guarantee. So if you're unsatisfied for any reason, they'll refund your money, no questions asked. That's zbiotics.com/majority. We will put the link in our YouTube and podcast descriptions. All right. We'll take a quick break. And when we come back, Matt Duss will magically appear next to Emma Vigeland. We'll be right back. We are back. Sam Seder on the Majority Report, joining us in studio. We rarely have anybody in studio these days. We've rarely had anybody in studio, period. I mean, for the most part. Former Bernie Sanders foreign policy advisor, now executive vice president at the Center for International Policy. And you just reminded me, we've been going to you for 10 years on foreign policy.
Yeah.
Matt Duss, welcome to the studio.
Thank you very much. Really glad to be here with you.
Let's start with this breaking news about Bob Menendez. Without getting too deep into the comically criminal indictment, where he has $480,000 stashed in like just about every crevice of his home.
And gold bars.
And gold bars.
Right.
Gold bars are what kind of push it over the...
And the amazing thing is also, like, to me, it's like the guy was went through a trial about 8 years ago. And so back in like 2015, I guess it was 2015, 2016. And all of these indictments basically start dating from like 2018 onward. It's like, you would think, I mean, I guess I don't have a criminal mind, but my feeling would be like, whoa, I barely escaped that one. Maybe I should get back into this again and see if I can get caught.
You know,
this
and the
time.
point that people should take note of about that trial is that he was not acquitted. It was a hung jury.
Right.
And it was a hung jury after the 2016 Supreme Court decision on Bob McDonnell, the governor of Virginia. And that decision, it was a unanimous decision that effectively defined political corruption out of existence.
Yes.
I mean, he had taken gifts and presents and organized meetings for this donor. And the ruling was essentially like, what, people can't do favors for friends?
Yeah.
You know? And even after that, Menendez could not get acquitted.
And we should say that's also why you hear a lot of stuff about like, Clarence Thomas is friends with Harlan Crow. He's
Yeah,
just a friend.
they're just friends.
Because if they're
Can't
friends,
take
there's a
plane rides
special
with friends?
Exactly.
You know, come on.
I mean, I exchanged tens of thousands of dollars and hundreds of thousands of dollars with my friends all the time.
Bills
Yeah.
stashed all over my house. Who
100%.
doesn't?
Definitionally, somebody who's going to give me $480,000, you're my friend.
You're my friend.
You're my friend.
Right, so there you go.
Menendez is the first sitting senator to be indicted on 2 unrelated criminal allegations in the history of the United States.
You know what? As long as you get a superlative, sometimes that's all that really matters.
Exactly.
But what's most important from your perspective as a foreign policy guy is Menendez has been chairing the Senate Foreign Relations Committee, went really above and beyond in, I think, like criticizing and trying to scuttle the Iran deal the first time around. I don't know how much influence he's had in inhibiting a second one. But what do you anticipate? Like, who do you? I don't know if Bob Menendez is going to resign. I mean, it feels like he's not a guy who feels too much
He
shame
didn't do it the
about
first
these
time.
things. But at one point, I think at one point it's going to be hard to maintain him in that position. I mean,
the caucus rules require him to give up the gavel, so he will be stepping down.
Oh, okay, all right.
Now that there's an indictment, and what I'm hearing just as of a little bit ago is that Ben Cardin, once again, will take the chair, which is what he did last time. Menendez had to step down.
Is that what are the implications of that, or are there any?
There are. I mean, Cardin is not as hawkish as Menendez. But he's still fairly hawkish. But he's also not running again. So the question is, should Democrats hold the majority? Which that's still very iffy. Who would come next? And that would, I think, it's either Shaheen or Coons would be in line on the Democratic side.
And it's necessarily seniority in that instance.
That's how that works.
It's too bad because Chris Murphy would be a big improvement.
I would agree.
Yeah.
All right.
But I'll also just say, like, Menendez is one of, if not the most hawkish Democrat, and it's really worth considering having him as the one who kind of determines the Senate Democrats' foreign policy agenda has just been a wild phenomenon.
And what are the chances that any of his I mean, because presumably, right, this has to do with these bribes have to do with like helping Egypt.
Yes.
Why would we assume that based upon this guy's habits that he doesn't have other positions that are a function of who is paying him?
I think we're going to probably find out more. This is, I guess, a 3-count indictment, but there's a lot in there. I was reading through it earlier. So.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy. And also, I mean, Egypt is, the United States has been under fire in the past for essentially not holding Egypt to the same standard that we hold other countries to, given our relationship. So this just colors that even more.
Yeah, absolutely. No, for the chairman of the Senate Foreign Relations Committee to have been doing this kind of, around the side lobbying is, a scandal by any definition.
That's the type of thing that would get you basically elected president if you have the right son-in-laws. All right, let's move on. Speaking of president, would you be a policy advisor to Sean Fain if he runs for president of the United States?
Yeah, let's
All
talk.
right, well, that was a question. That was a question that we had. All right, let's get to Ukraine. Zelensky in town at the General Assembly. Poland just announced that they're going to no longer provide any more weapons. I think Zelensky's up in Canada right now, actually talking to their
Trudeau, yeah.
to Trudeau, and I think maybe he's going to address their parliament. I'm not quite sure about that, but address just like where we're at, what are the implications of Poland, and like what do you think is going on here? Because it is there is a dropping support for continuing armament. We've been, this has been escalating in terms of how much money and how much support we're giving. Give us your perspective on this.
I mean, I think a quick take on Poland is just remember they've got an election in a few weeks. So, I mean, that is playing a role here. I mean, Poland has been actually extremely supportive, even though they got a very right-leaning government. I mean, the Poles have been very, very generous to the Ukrainian neighbors in terms of bringing them in, providing a place for them, accepting all these refugees. There's issues with regard to Ukraine's grain shipments, which are competing with Polish grain. The Poles have allowed the grain to transit Poland, but they don't want it to be sold in the Polish market. So there's a few things going on here, but yes, it also has to do with some, I guess, questions and some exhaustion on where is this war going. But in general, I think that the way that Poland has handled the influx of Ukrainian refugees and the war in general has been fairly admirable.
And so, is it going to have implications on? I mean, are their ending of military support? Is that going to have broad implications? Like, how much military support would they provide?
I mean, some, not a lot. And what I've heard from folks is like after the elections, they will probably reverse that. Who knows what will happen? But of course, the vast majority of military aid is coming from the United States and other countries in Europe. But it's as a political message, it's one we should take note of.
Give us your perspective on the. I mean, I think the perspective on the war is fairly straightforward. Russia invaded, and Ukraine is pushing them at least back. How much do you know? How much territory since we started providing aid? How much territory has Ukrainians regained? I mean, like, how effective has this been? Because a lot of people were saying on day one that when the United States was starting to provide aid, we shouldn't do this. We should settle for a negotiated settlement right now. You can't get it. You can't win, and that's it.
As of last year, I mean, the Ukrainians have taken back some 50% of what the Russians controlled at one point. That includes last year's counteroffensive and this year's counteroffensive, which has been moving much slower. There's a number of reasons for that. I think everyone was amazed and impressed by what the Ukrainians were able to achieve last year, about a year ago, especially in cities like Kherson. But what happened in those where you had Russian troops that were not dug in, they were fairly green. A lot of them just fled. That's not to take anything away from the Ukrainians who fought bravely. But a year later, the Russians are much more dug in. They've created much more layered minefields, and it's just much slower going for the Ukrainians, but they are slowly making progress. Obviously, the Ukrainians are telling their story about what they've been trying to do. We've been seeing some leaked criticisms from the Biden administration about, the pace of this or the way that they are or are not able to kind of integrate forces and to make greater gains. But there's no question that it's going much, much slower than a year ago. So,
and overall, is this something from your perspective that we should be doing? Is there a limiting principle on this?
Well, I think the Biden administration, and in my view, rightly, have always, they've been clear about what they want to see here, and that's Ukraine to take back control of their country and for Russia to stop the war. But they've also been fairly restrained and careful about the amount and quality of military assistance they've been giving, because Putin has nuclear weapons, and we
Right.
do want to be careful that we don't trigger a nuclear war. Some people criticize him for that. I think that's entirely reasonable. I don't want to die in a nuclear war. The Ukrainians don't want to die in a nuclear exchange. But all along the way, as the Ukrainians have tested these ideas, Putin has not responded or escalated as some initially feared. We've seen multiple, you all saw the news about Elon Musk turning off Starlink because he
Right.
did not want to enable an attack on Sevastopol. We've seen multiple attacks on Sevastopol by the Ukrainians, including, the night before I arrived in Kyiv last week. And we didn't see any kind of escalation or particular escalation by the Russians in response to that.
Okay, so what did you see when you were in Kyiv?
Yeah. What I saw in Kyiv was a city that the war was almost not in evidence. Ukraine is very well protected by anti-aircraft, by Patriot missile batteries, anti-missile batteries. Certainly you saw soldiers around. You saw certain areas of the city, but only a few closed off. You saw patriotic posters and slogans, though I was interested to see that there is no Zelensky cult of personality. I don't think I saw a single poster with Zelensky's face on it. You saw just Ukrainian soldiers and Ukrainian civilians, and slogans like "Let's pull together, let's win this." But this is a city that is, people are out, people are walking around, people are having fun. And what I heard from a lot of Ukrainians, just kind of unanimously, that the invasion in 2022 triggered a renaissance of Ukrainian culture across the board, like more restaurants, more culture, more music, more unity, more, and the irony, of course, is this is exactly what Putin was trying to clamp down on and prevent and erase, which was the Ukrainian nation. And this is not unique to Ukraine. I mean, you see
Right.
people responding like this in similar situations.
Will you just turn your mic directly to pull it down just a little bit more? Yeah, right.
There we go.
Okay.
So, okay, and do you have a sense, though, I mean, of broadly, like, let's say the United States was to stop all aid. Obviously, the Ukrainians they would be much more susceptible to Russia. But what would happen? Like, I mean, would the next day, would they sue for peace, as it were? Or, like, would Russia just continue to roll through? Like, why? What I don't understand is, I understand the theory that if we provide less aid, that the Ukrainians will have to, at one point, negotiate for peace because they won't have the ability at one point to wage the type of, the defense that they've been waging.
Yeah.
Presumably they would go to some type of underground, asymmetrical warfare. But what would be the limiting principle for Russia in that instance to say
Right.
why would they say okay, now we'll sue for peace, no, as opposed to actually we're just going to roll through the rest
And
of the country.
that's the key point.
Yeah.
I mean, Putin to this day has given no evidence that he's interested in any kind of negotiation that the Ukrainians could possibly accept. I think a lot of people say it's a cliche, partly because it's true, but I think people understand that at some point there will be a negotiation. The Ukrainians, quite rightly, justified according to international law, they want 100% of their country back. If and when Putin indicates that he wants to actually negotiate something short of that, which he has not yet done, I think the Biden administration and others are going to take a look at that. They want to be clear publicly for now. We are standing behind the Ukrainians. We are not pressing them to negotiate away their country. But as of now, that's not a decision they have to make because Putin has not given any sign that he's remotely interested in that negotiation.
What about reports that the U.S. has inhibited Ukraine from negotiating at different times?
I don't see, I haven't seen any evidence of that.
Did Boris Johnson?
Yeah, I mean, this is one of those things that kind of goes around. I mean, that there was, a deal on the table, and then Boris Johnson showed up and was like, "Yeah, don't do that," and they were like, "Okay, we won't do that." It's the story, as is often the case, is much more complex. You had this negotiation going on. I think it was April of 2022 in Istanbul with Ukrainian representatives, Russian representatives. It was unclear how much authority the Russian representatives actually had from Putin. There were the kind of broad outlines of a deal. But again, it's not like they were about to sign and Boris, Johnson showed up and said, you know what, nah, don't do it. So it's unclear whether that could have even come to fruition. But it's also worth noting in that period is when Bucha was taken back. This was a town that was occupied by the Russians, and just mass atrocities were discovered there. And that not only did that inflame Ukrainian public opinion and make it much more difficult to sign any deal, even if a deal had been in the offing out of that, it also made clear to Ukrainians what their colleagues, their fellow citizens in the other occupied territories were facing. And to sign a deal that would consign Ukrainians to that fate was something that was just not doable.
When you say that the confines or like the outlines of a deal would Ukrainians obviously want 100% of their territory back. What is the sentiment around the Donbass? That's not included in that 100%?
It is.
Oh,
I mean, that is, pre, 1991 Ukraine. That includes Crimea. It does.
Yeah.
There's no denying that'll be difficult. But again, as a matter of international law, we should recognize that is justified. But if we do get to a point, and once again, I think the onus is on Putin to indicate any, interest in a negotiation. I mean, we can address it then, but I don't think we need to start negotiating amongst ourselves before we see those signs.
Right. Of course, you would ask for 100% as a starting point, because otherwise you're never going to get more than what you ask for at the beginning in this situation. So what is the U.S. policy in reality? In other words, how much is it? It's going to be. It basically is enough to maintain the ability of the Ukrainians to make some progress. It's essentially just to make sure. I mean, this is basically like a war of attrition. There doesn't seem to be any other sort of solution here. It's just a question of where the parties are at that when we reach attrition.
Well, I think part of it is judging what the Ukrainians, what equipment they can kind of assimilate at any given time, and they've shown a great ability, tactically, to use new equipment, to train on it, to integrate it into their approach. But you have hawkish critics of Biden who've been saying from the beginning, just give them everything, give it everything, and the truth is they just can't learn on this stuff.
Absorb
we've been giving, and again, I think Biden and his team deserve some credit for they're watching this closely and okay, we're going to give them greater equipment, different kinds of equipment at a pace that they can actually learn on it, train on it, because this stuff does take a lot of time to learn how to use and to integrate it into the war. And
is there any chance we would get to the point where Putin would say, I'm interested in negotiating for real prior to the election? It just seems so hard to imagine that without there being some type of major, upheaval in Russia, that there is a circumstance where Putin would not wait to see the outcome of the 2024 election.
I think that's right. And, who knows what information Putin is getting? That's always a question. I mean, how does he see the war? Which advisors is he listening to? What information are they afraid to tell him? Or, what does he understand about the war? And what could we do or the Ukrainians do that could possibly shift that strategic calculation?
And that's actually not that's not such a sort of a given as to what he's getting, because he clearly, it seems to me, I mean, and tell me if my assessment of this is wrong. It looked to me like the Biden administration was not prepared to provide any aid to Ukraine once this invasion started, until it became clear that everyone had overestimated Russia's ability and simultaneously underestimated Ukraine's ability to repel Russia, but overestimated Russia's ability because it seemed to me like the Biden administration was under the impression that this is going to be like a 8-day war, and then Ukraine is going to have a leadership that is essentially installed more or less by Putin. And Putin, I think, thought that too, and which begs the question of is it even possible for him to get the real idea of what's going on there? Is he even able to make an assessment?
Yeah, I mean, again, going back to what I said, I mean, who knows what information he's getting? What I heard from some folks over there is like the initial invasion, like they determined that the Russians were actually using Soviet era maps because they were striking like, you know, manufacturing plants that had been abandoned for 2 decades because those used to be kind of arms manufacturing plants back in the Soviet days. But what you said about, you know, what the Biden administration thought, I mean, I would also note here, and this, I think, goes to, you know, some who have claimed that, Biden wanted this. It was his NATO provocation. We kind of goaded Putin into this. I mean, Biden wanted to park the U.S.-Russia relationship over here. They had this, summit in 2021. The goal was to say, listen, we're not going to have a great relationship with Putin, but we kind of just want to park the relationship, see if we can just manage it. Putin obviously had other ideas. But I think we saw, you know, a number of high-level, you know, administration officials like Bill Burns, the CIA chief, who's also kind of the unofficial special envoy for tough things. You know, they send him wherever things are really hard to go over to Russia and actually talk to Putin and his team. You know, you saw like Macron, you had Schultz from Germany going over there, essentially putting NATO on the table in so many words, not directly, but that was clearly part of the conversation. So
What do you mean by that? Like saying like we're willing to ramp down NATO?
You're saying we're willing to, you know, do as much as we can to address Russia's strategic concerns, strategic defense concerns. Now, one can argue that, well, they should have just come right out and said Ukraine won't be part of NATO. I am given, you know, what Putin himself has described as the kind of grandiose objectives and grievances that kind of undergird this invasion. I'm skeptical that even doing that would have been enough for Putin, but it is clear that the United States and its allies were willing to talk about that in some respect.
Well, because, I mean, that is taking Putin's protestations about NATO and his justification for the invasion a little bit too at face value in that sense, because obviously what this invasion and this war has done has only ramped up NATO's power, given the additions of Finland and Sweden. Right.
No, I mean, Finland with the longest, you know, European land border with Russia, now a member of NATO. I mean, I've kind of described the NATO, you know, Russia's concern with NATO as, you know, 10 feet of bridge for 100 feet of chasm. You know, it's one of Putin and Russia's concerns and grievances, but there are so many others. I mean, you just have to read or listen to Putin's speeches when he talked about, you know, Ukrainians aren't a real nation, they're just Russians and all of that.
What was your perspective on NATO before this, and has your perspective on it changed?
I mean, initially, you know, you don't have to just listen to Putin about, you know, Russian concerns about NATO. I mean, you even had people like Bill Burns, you had former Defense Secretary Bill Perry, and all kinds of American officials who had engaged with the Russians, you know, post-Cold War, who understood that, you know, the growth of NATO was a real concern for Russia. But, you know, even saying that, I think this idea that the U.S. is just using NATO as a tool of imperialism, I mean, when we say NATO expansion, it's like, well, these countries want to join a defense alliance with the United States. That's not to say there aren't other drivers here. Certainly, there are benefits to America's military-industrial complex. We should be conscious of that. We should be conscious of, okay, it's a defensive alliance. What is that? What is it in defense of? It needs to be in defense of healthy, vibrant democracies. So, you know, security alliances are good, but, you know, the question is, what are they for?
And I mean, has your perspective on the utility of NATO changed?
Probably a little bit. I mean, I think everyone has taken note of, you know, Putin has been very careful not to attack any countries in NATO.
Right.
You know, and even the addition of Finland and Sweden to NATO after Putin, you know, claimed this as a central concern, the Russian response to that was very muted. So there is a particular obsession with
If they were
Ukraine.
trying to get NATO to go away.
Oh, right.
Poor job.
Oh, no,
I mean,
on both counts, whether it's the growth of NATO or kind of crushing Ukrainian nationalism, both of those have been a spectacular failure.
Yeah.
All right. So last question though, on Ukraine anyways. There's this weird relationship. I don't know, weird is the right word, but there's this sort of like paradoxical relationship with essentially with the U.S. and China and Russia, because on one hand, like the U.S. has been building up to be somewhat antagonistic to China since at least my understanding is, at least during the Obama administration, when we made the Asian pivot.
Which we wanted to do, though, even before 9/11, right? There were a lot of.
I mean,
designs on that.
I've told this story many times, at least, that Gary Hart told us about the back in '04, told us about the sort of the 21st century threats to the United States, and the story about I think it was Liz Cheney or Lynn Cheney sitting on a committee talking about China at that time.
Yeah, Washington was teeing up China. If you remember the Hainan Island incident where the U.S. plane was knocked down over, I mean, that was, we were getting close to that.
I think the whole project for a new American century was about the idea of making sure that China does not become a superpower so that we can maintain our hyperpower status, et cetera, et cetera.
It was also about slotting China in for the now defunct Soviet Union. And when 9/11 happened, they're like, nope, here, we're going to slot terrorism in there.
And so, but it seems that the quicker this gets resolved, the less an alliance between China and Russia has time to sort of, or a reason to develop in the same way, right? I mean, I don't know what Russia offers China as much as China certainly could offer Russia, it seems to me.
Oh, clearly. I mean, the way it's been put to me by multiple people is that Russia is on the way, if not already, kind of a vassal state of China. I mean, China has moved in as businesses fled Moscow in the wake of the invasion. Chinese state-connected businesses have moved in literally into those same offices in Moscow. So, there is, I wouldn't quite call it a patron-client relationship yet, but it seems to be kind of heading that way. Although, listen, Russia, clearly has, a lot of resources it can still use. It is not helpless. It is not entirely dependent, although it is becoming more dependent.
How does India fit into this? I mean, what is their relationship with Russia and China in this way?
I mean, they continue to trade with both to some consternation. Clearly, the Biden administration, and again, let's just step back. I mean, the Biden administration sees foreign policy, global affairs, almost entirely through the lens of strategic competition with China. I mean, that is the kind of way to understand everything that they're doing. Again, I agree with their policy in Ukraine. I don't have any illusions that they're doing the right thing in Ukraine for my reasons. They see it consistent for now with strategic competition with China. They make speeches about democracy and defending international law. Those things tend to go by the wayside when it comes to countries like Saudi Arabia or India, because those countries are seen as useful partners or necessary partners in competition with China.
Let's talk about India, because Justin Trudeau seems really convinced that Modi had an assassination team basically come to Canada and assassinate a Canadian citizen who was, I guess, a critic of
a Sikh activist who supported an independent Sikh state.
And what happens with that? I mean, I've seen how we have backed down from MBS.
Right. Everyone has seen that. And Modi has seen that, importantly.
Well, that's basically what's going on, right? I mean, it's open season, it seems like.
I wish that weren't it, but it is. I mean, yesterday we saw a comment from Jake Sullivan, National Security Advisor, where he was asked about that. And he said, we support the investigation the Canadians are doing. Notably, the Biden administration has not endorsed the accusation. But Jake made a comment like, we support the investigation. You don't get some kind of special permit. I forget the word he actually used, but you don't get a special, permission to do this if you're an ally. And it's like, well, MBS might beg to differ on that because, yes, after, everyone knows what Biden said on the campaign trail, we're going to make them a pariah. We're going to reassess this relationship. And we've all seen what's happened since then.
Which is absolutely none of that.
Absolutely none of that. So you do get special permission, apparently, to assassinate critics abroad if you're seen as necessary. And
MBS is still, even despite the fact that Biden sort of, I don't want to say bent the knee, but sort of bent the knee.
Bumped the fist.
Yes, bumped the fist.
Yeah, literally.
MBS still said, I'm going to make it, I'm going to shave a couple of percentage points off of your electoral chances by raising gas prices over the next year.
That's right.
What is the economic driver behind the efforts clearly by the Biden administration to deepen ties with Modi's government here?
Well, I think it's, they want to keep as many people on, Team America or close to Team America. as they can. I mean, again, through the logic of strategic competition, the relationships themselves become valuable, regardless of who it's with.
Because you don't know
Right.
when you'll need to call on it in the future for whatever circumstance.
Right.
But this seems to be a little bit problematic. This thing where there seems to be this sort of like license to go and assassinate
Yes.
people wherever they want, because that seems to be able to metastasize. I mean, I am also recalling that, like, wasn't it Flynn was hired by Erdogan to get Gulen, right? The
Right.
like a Turkish dissident.
Yeah, Fethullah Gulen.
To kidnap him, and I guess Flynn just couldn't get his shit together. I guess, or I'm not sure exactly what happened there, but this seems like it's going to be problematic because I don't.
Yeah.
How do you stop this? Like, if you set up the paradigm that we've created in terms of our foreign relations, and this idea that we're going to be in some form of competition with China. It means that essentially any of the major players that we perceive to be chess pieces within this, broader game have carte blanche to do, as long as they don't do something really, really big.
Yeah.
Like, maybe you can't assassinate, maybe you can't kill like 30 people.
Yeah.
But maybe one at a time you could get up into the teens.
Yeah, if you want it to be 30 people, you have to be the United States, and they have to do it with flying robots.
Right.
That's,
Right.
Well, so what's an alternative paradigm?
Well, an alternative paradigm, well, first to recognize, listen, we have to work with imperfect and sometimes very bad governments. Let's understand the costs and risks that come with that. It's not the first time we've ever been presented with these trade-offs. I mean, this was our policy during the Cold War. We're in a kind of, U.S. versus Soviet global competition, and we want to collect as many friends and allies and partners, and some of that are going to be really bad. And in fact, sometimes we're going to replace democratic governments that were pro-Soviet with really bad dictatorial or repressive governments that'll be friends with us. I mean, Chile, we just passed the anniversary of that U.S.-backed coup, and that stuff may seem like it's working in the short term, but it really does come back to bite us in the longer term in a lot of ways. We're dealing right now in, just for example, Latin America. I mean, we're trying to rebuild a relationship with this region, in my view, possibly the most important, region for the United States to build partnerships for a lot of reasons. But the kind of deep distrust, entirely justified distrust of the United States because of the way we've treated this region is a real hindrance.
And we're seeing the implications of that in terms of like our long-term attempts to disintegrate the Venezuelan economy.
Mm-hmm.
We're seeing it in terms of like our thwarting of democratic, any type of like democracy and functioning civil society in places like Honduras and
the election of leaders who are like have the cachet of being in opposition to what's perceived, like in Guatemala, what's perceived as like a corrupt right-wing kind of U.S. connected regime.
Well, let's talk about
and is
Biden's pact with Lula about worker rights. Like, is that the beginning of an attempt to? Because we no longer have the fear of like what happens if we get democratic socialist countries in Latin America. That's no longer a concern, really, is it?
Right. No, I think, having said all what I just said, I feel like Biden's approach to Lula in particular, but others like Petro, like Boric in the region have actually been really good and admirable. I mean, if you look at the approach that Biden and his team took to the election last year. I mean, they had a lot of support from members of Congress, including from Bernie and Tim Kaine, who offered a resolution just supporting free and fair elections and saying the relationship between our countries would be threatened if there were any shenanigans, essentially. But at the same time, Biden was sending multiple folks down there, Secretary of Defense Austin, CIA Director Bill Burns, down there to talk to their counterparts and just make clear, we want a free and fair election. They were not putting a thumb on the scale for either side. And again, the reason that Bernie was pressing this message with Biden as well is because we were in touch with a lot of Brazilian activists, and that is what they asked for. And I think that's kind of the key thing. We were hearing from Brazilian civil society and said, this is what we need from the United States of America. Support a free and fair election and recognize the results of that election as soon as they are clear. And that was the ask. That's what Biden did. They were on the phone with Lula a short time after that. Lula was in the White House just a few weeks after that. I mean, that is 180 degrees from Obama's treatment of Lula
Right.
years ago.
And this is despite the fact that Lula has not necessarily been like supportive of our support of
Right.
Ukraine and this and that. It's basically like
Right,
we
and-
don't need their support for our foreign policy as much as we need stability from them and to sort of
Right.
grow.
I think it's a really important recognition that this is an important and multifaceted relationship. So Lula does not have to sign on to, what we want him to say about Ukraine, for example. We would like if he talked about it in a different way, but we're not going to determine the relationship based on that. So I think this meeting they did the other day, a joint partnership defending labor rights, is huge. This is a very big deal. I mean, they're already working on climate issues together. I was down in Brazil in the summer talking to some of Lula's people. I mean, they are going all in behind a green transition. They are really betting his presidency on that in a lot of ways, in terms of preserving the Amazon, in terms of building, creating new jobs, supporting labor rights, all with the goal of moving away from fossil fuels. And so I think this cuts across so many issues that
Is it
that are
is it
important to
the
us.
material implications of these agreements, or is it just the idea that we're trying to sort of reorient our relationship with that whole region
Yeah.
and to be supportive instead of like disruptive?
Yeah.
A and B. Is there any impetus within Congress or in the foreign policy establishment to actually start to provide the type of aid that we've provided to places like, I don't know, to Egypt and Israel for that matter, like to grow that and see if there is, have we so destroyed civil institutions in many of these countries over the course of decades of interfering and inhibiting, sort of like the growth of these institutions, that we could pour money in there, but it's not going to be utilized in the way that it should be.
I mean, to answer your first question, I think for now that partnership is, hazy on the details, but I think it's important as a rhetorical matter to see Biden and Lula sitting together talking about this and lifting up the importance of labor, especially as we're seeing multiple
Right.
strikes here in the United States. I think that's a very big deal, and and that is an area where I think Biden and Lula really do have a meeting of the minds and a meeting of the priorities. A second thing to note here, I don't think we're quite there yet where we're going to see the kind of aid coming from Congress, giving what Congress's priorities, but I also think it's worth noting we haven't seen, I mean, the concern from someone like, from Obama, why he kind of kept Lula at arm's length, was a fear of the political costs domestically, of being seen as too close to a left-wing leader. Biden's experienced none of those costs, right?
Yeah, what?
I think we saw a few cranky tweets from Marco Rubio. That's it.
Yeah, who cares?
What
Right.
this has shown, and again, I think this is where the left deserves credit. I mean, the left has shown that, it can provide cover and political space for Biden to have a better policy toward this region.
Also, to be fair, like, the Republicans get distracted by Dr. Seuss at this point.
Yeah.
Like literally.
Right, so
And
let's use that.
Well, this is why they should be moving more towards a broader relationship with Venezuela. That might help a little bit in like our dependence on something like Middle Eastern oil.
Right.
That would be is that a step that you think that they would realistically take?
I don't think they're there yet, but you're totally right. But
Well,
I think
we don't really have a dependence on Middle East oil as much as we don't want China to have a deeper relationship with
Right.
Middle Eastern
But they're
oil.
already doing that with Saudi Arabia.
They're doing it, but they don't. That seems to be like we could make up the other 10% of oil that we get. I mean, and granted, it affects international prices.
right. That's the
although
key thing.
if
They
we
can
were to-
turn a crank and raise the prices.
Yes.
Yeah.
Although we could nationalize some stuff
Yeah.
maybe, and we could fix that in a day.
All right.
To me, but the real issue I think is, I mean, ultimately is that we want Saudi Arabia to continue to play both sides because we don't want to play just Chinese
One side.
sides.
Yeah.
Let's talk about this, like Biden and Saudi Arabia with their mutual defense pact. I mean, that's basically what that's a function of.
Yeah, I mean, it's being presented as, Israeli-Saudi normalization, and there is some element of that. But most of the details that have been reported thus far seem like this is in my view, a U.S.-Saudi pact that is being is receiving a thin layer of varnish about peace with Israel that's being used to sell it. in Congress and domestically, because a defense pact with a government like Saudi Arabia by itself would be much, much more difficult, if not impossible, to pass.
Iran. What is happening on? I mean, we just had a unfreeze $6 billion worth of assets for the release of 5 prisoners. Six prisoners?
Was it 5? Yeah, I think it was originally 4, and then there was, at the last minute, they added a fifth, I believe.
Is that an indication that maybe there is or does that help get to a resumption of the nuke deal, or where are we in that?
Yeah, unfortunately, I think the JCPOA, as it was, is no longer operative, and there's a lot of reasons for that. One is there's just zero trust on the part of the Iranians. And also the sunset.
How could they?
How could they exactly? And that was
there's I don't know what the odds are, but Donald Trump could be president in 16 months,
exactly.
And then they'd be back to where they were.
Right. And again, this is an area where I've been pretty critical of the administration. There were a few promises that Biden made on foreign policy that were as unequivocal about rejoining the Iranian nuclear agreement, and then they came into office and they just slow walked it in a way that a lot of us found confounding. And I think from the Iranians' perspective, they were kind of waiting to see, okay, this guy was just elected. Can we trust him to keep his promises? And what he showed them was, well, maybe not. Right. And once you've spoiled that, and that's not to say we would have absolutely been able to get back into the deal had they moved sooner, but that we'll never know. And we are where we are now, which is essentially a deal that is no longer going to work.
Is the hostage exchange a sign that talks may be getting closer? That was some of what I saw in terms of prognostications on the internet.
Yeah, anytime
Yes,
yeah.
Sorry, go on.
No. Anytime you have, any kind of negotiation like this, I think, and you do have some kind of trust established. The question is always, can you expand that into other issues? And it's possible, but again, we are in a spot now where I think if there's going to be a deal, it's going to be some much smaller nuclear deal. The Iranian program and their enrichment has continued. They have a much larger stockpile. So, in my view, I think the JCPOA as it was an extraordinary deal. Even, despite the criticism you saw from the right, but I think the criticism you saw from the right was not of the deal itself. It's just that they didn't want to make a deal with Iran.
Right. They wanted it to be all-encompassing, but the terms of the deal as Obama entered were, we're going to limit it to nuclear proliferation, and then maybe that deal becomes the building block for something else in the future.
Right.
What about Biden seeing Netanyahu? I mean, this is... it seems to me it's so much more. It would be so much easier now for Biden to say, with all this stuff going on with your so-called judicial reform, you have half your country is protesting on every other weekend.
It's amazing.
We can't see you in this instance because the entire premise, and I don't frankly buy this anymore. But you're the only democracy in the region, which, first off, I'm not even sure that we care. Why would we care? That doesn't inhibit our relations with anybody else whatsoever. You're the only democracy in the region. Therefore, we don't have to forgive you assassinating somebody on soil. Although I'm sure we do that anyways. We do forgive them. We don't even raise it as an issue. We're in favor of who they assassinate more often than not, I guess. But why isn't he taking this opportunity, or is it just there's just too many? The Biden administration feels like if they could just have one foreign policy issue for the entire administration, they would have been fine with that.
Right. They
just seem to want to sweep as much under the rug as possible.
Right. There's a few things going on here. One is, as I said before, it's the lens of strategic competition, which is to say that this relationship, and it is a longstanding and very deep and multifaceted security relationship with Israel, so it becomes even more important. You also have, as you said, I think, in general, in terms of foreign policy, they just don't want to talk about foreign policy. They don't want to fight about foreign policy. They want to expend the minimum amount of political capital arguing about foreign policy or getting into fights about foreign policy that's possible, and especially on an issue like Israel, which is, controversial and tough, as we all know. They just don't want to get drawn into this stuff. And lastly, it's Biden himself, kind of ideologically. I mean, he has a view of Israel. I think he's made it clear multiple times. That is, I guess I'll kind of kindly call it vintage.
Right.
That's incredibly kind.
Yes. And he has a view of an Israel that once existed, if it ever did.
He was a senator during the Yom Kippur War, I think.
Right.
That was in '73.
And he has a long-standing relationship with Netanyahu too. And Biden is someone for whom personal relationships matter a lot. For good and for bad. So that's what got us where we are. But again, the cost here is that they have expended almost no energy on Palestinian rights. They have essentially turned a blind eye and continued blanket diplomatic support for Israel at the UN in the face of an extremely aggressive annexationist agenda in Israel right now. And again, I think this is going to come back. There are going to be very bad consequences for this.
Do you think where is the Democratic caucus in this regard? Because it felt like there was some progress being made when Tim Kaine and I don't know, a couple others boycotted Netanyahu's visit to Congress. In part because it was, I think it was a Boehner at the time who had invited, or maybe it was Ryan. I can't remember who.
It was Boehner.
Invited him just to try and show up Obama, But I took that as a pretty good sign that someone as sort of like middle of the road, like Tim Kaine, would be in a position. And it just seems like this is even lower hanging fruit now because of this stuff that's, their authoritarianism in the occupied territories is sort of like come home to roost, to borrow a phrase from Reverend Wright. Is there anybody in Congress who's like sort of like pursuing the beyond Bernie?
I mean, there's Bernie. There's Van Hollen, who I think has been a real champ on this in terms of the relationship, but also particularly on Palestinian rights. On Shireen Abu Akleh, he's been very vocal in pushing. Frankly, he should not have to expend this much energy pressuring a U.S. administration to investigate the murder of a U.S. citizen, but he has championed that. And obviously, you have an increasing number of folks over in the House side. Rashid Tlaib, of course, the Squad, but more than the Squad, people like Buchan and others. So I would say the debate has shifted. Now, when does that become evident in policy? That's the real question. I think we've certainly seen a sort of reaction from groups like AIPAC, who, they understand that the debate is shifting, and they want to stop that. And the way they're trying to stop that is by pumping tens of millions of dollars into primaries. Of Republican money, often. Yeah.
Matt Duss, so awesome to get an opportunity to talk to you.
Great to be here.
We're going to take a break and get to Judy Gold. You're welcome to hang out. I would love the chat more. You watch Judy Gold will crap all over. Who knows who?
I know, right?
All right.
But certainly,
I'll have to wait to find out then.
Exactly. Real pleasure, Matt Duss. Thanks so much, and congratulations on your new gig.
Thanks a lot.
That's exciting.
What's the new gig?
Yeah, I moved over to the Center for International Policy a few weeks ago, working with Nancy O'Kale, who's the president, a really great scholar and activist. We're building up a new team, going to establish CIP as a new foreign policy think tank for the left.
Love it.
There's not a huge amount of competition.
There isn't. There's some. There's a scrappy coalition, a lot of good groups, but we really wanted to help, work with all of our colleagues to create an institution that could kind of give that more strength and definition.
Well, good. We look forward to talking to you more in the future. I have a feeling we're going to have. It feels like it's not going to get better before it gets worse.
The work continues, as I say.
Matt Duss, always a pleasure. We're going to take a quick break, folks. And when we come back, Judy Gold will be with us. We'll be right back after this. We are back.
Level-headed.
Fuck you!
Calm, cool, and collected.
I have a bigger penis than him.
Judy Gold is on the line to keep us all connected.
What the fuck is the matter with him?
A steady hand to guide us. She'll keep us calm and carry on.
No fucking way!
Too bad Jimmy Reefer Cuck didn't find her worthy of a song. Well, Judy Gold.
And he's such a fucking penis head liar. I'm not kidding.
Yes, ladies and gentlemen.
That's the president of the United States. That's the
Judy
president.
Gold joining us just off of her big star turn in a fundraiser for Senator Menendez in New Jersey.
Oh, yes. He's actually in my hotel room right now. He wants to get his money out of the safe.
He's got it stored all
He's
over
got
the
a
country.
whole bunch of gold bars.
Oh my God.
Damn, that's
He's
hard
like,
to travel
"You're
with.
Judy He's like, you're Judy Gold. Will you hold on to these gold bars?
Nice.
Yeah.
That's
Sam, and
9/10.
Emma, I'm going to apologize. I'm at a hotel in Washington, D.C., as you can tell, because there's artwork behind me. And I couldn't get on the Wi-Fi. So then I'm like, I have to be on a television show. And they gave me the staff Wi-Fi, which I can't even tell you how many. Forget it.
How
It's
is
like-
Wi-Fi not in a Washington, D.C. hotel? How
They're
do they
like,
not?
you have to get on it, and you have to put in your email. And I kept putting in my email, and it's like, not working. And then I called, and they're like, we'll give you the staff one. So I'm thinking, oh, the staff one is like the name of the hotel and like an exclamation point. But no, it's like 95 digits and dollar signs and exclamation points and uppercase and lowercase and number and letter. It was, yeah. So I'm here.
And what are you doing in D.C.? Are you testifying in front of Congress or what's going on?
Yes, and I'm working at the Arlington Draft House tonight and tomorrow night. So tonight at 7 and tomorrow at 7 and 9:30.
Well, I thought that you were in someplace tropical because you have a tan. You've got a tan, Judy.
Well, Emma, that is very observant. Now, I spent the summer in Provincetown, Massachusetts, because it's required when you join my lesbian club. And
Understood.
I play tennis every day. And
Is that right?
And although I put on sunscreen, I still get bronzed. Okay, I might have put on a little bronzer, but you know what? I still wear my mask, even if the bronzer gets on the mask.
Oh, that is a very difficult.
Yes.
I mean, I've dealt with that, but
Yeah.
we're all coming off COVID here, so
We got
to worry
the
for a
office
little
got
bit.
hit by COVID.
Well, you guys saw that in the
I know.
Cassidy
I
Bet
texted
revelation,
with.
right? Oh, sorry. The Trump book, that Trump advisor Cassidy Hutchinson.
Oh, yes.
She said that Trump had bronzer on his mask, and that's why he didn't want to wear it.
I
Yeah.
mean, I
I'm
sympathize with him.
Okay, but like I did a reference that you guys had no reaction to.
COVID break.
Thank God for Matt Duss.
Actually, it was Bradley who.
Oh,
did
Bradley. Oh, Bradley said that.
Yes.
They look exactly alike. Bradley's from New Jersey, by the way. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, so wait, have you been touring a lot? Have you been performing a lot, or is
You
this like
know-
your first time back after the summer?
Well, during the summer, I work at the Post Office Cafe and Cabaret, and I do 3 shows a week, 3-hour shows a week, work on new material, and I did that all summer. I don't know if you saw my feature in the New York Times. I was featured in How She Spends Her Sundays.
Nope, I don't watch.
I don't know
Oh,
what that
God.
is.
It's
feature.
a
I'm
big
sorry.
thing.
I don't
And
read the.
They
I
followed
don't
me
read the.
around. They followed me around, and Alex Strauss, what a great journalist. She wrote the article, and it was all about how I spend my Sundays. And I had a great time. I love working in Provincetown. The audiences are smart, and now I'm back on the Crapo Road.
The Crapo Road. Is this your first gig back on the Crapo Road?
Yeah.
And do you find that people really turn out when you refer to these venues as Crapo?
Well, no, I don't think the venue's crapo. I just hate the packing. I can't. It's like I'm too old, Sam. I'm 60. I'm 60 years old. How much
You don't look
longer
60.
can I
You
schlep?
don't look 60.
Thank you.
You don't look
And I haven't
60
had
at all.
anything done either. But how long can I schlep like this? I mean, But I love being on stage. I love doing stand-up.
So that's the dilemma.
Right.
And how big is this venue in Arlington?
Who knows?
Okay, fair.
Yeah, I really do my research.
And so this is your first time back on the road in months, I guess.
Well, yeah. In July, I was at the Montreal, the Just for Laughs. And so, that was 12 days. I wanted to kill myself. And now I'm here. It's only like last night I was in Baltimore and I interviewed Leslie Jones because she has a new book out, which is fantastic. So I interviewed her at the Enoch Pratt Free Library. There were like 700 people there. It was unbelievable. So that was fun. So I did that last night in Baltimore. Then I drove to DC. I did morning TV. And here I am on the Majority Report.
Have you been affected at all by the strikes?
Yeah. Sam, I'm in the Writers Guild and SAG-AFTRA. Okay.
I know, all right.
I am. Yeah, it's horrible.
Why haven't we picketed together on a Thursday?
I picketed, but I didn't. Then I went away, and now I'm going to start picketing again. It's ridiculous. And let me tell you something. The shows that I did for cable, or not a streaming or whatever, the residuals, they go to the producers make so much money, and me who wrote all my jokes and all this stuff, I get nothing. It's horrible.
Well, Matt was just saying that he saw you on Unbreakable Kimmy Schmidt.
On one of those streaming services that
I'll
probably
get
wasn't
like
paying
34 cents. Let me tell you something.
Yeah.
That
what was that
show,
like?
Here, I'll tell you what it was like, Emma, because I've done other television where I had much bigger parts. So they're like, can you come on and be a clown? And I said, no. And they're like, no, it'll be really fun. And I'm like, I'm not going to make myself look like, a crazy person. I am a crazy person, but I don't want to so, and it didn't have any it had like one or two lines. And then I'm like, no. And they're like, no, they really want you. And they're going to improv. You're going to improv. And you're going to have a bunch of lines and blah, blah, blah. Of course, I go there. We do the whole thing. And I don't even think I had a line, Bradley. Did I?
You had a couple of lines, but yeah, it wasn't.
It's Matt Lack.
This is Matt. Yeah.
Oh, Matt Lack. I thought Bradley saw me. Okay, I can't with the two of them.
You know, Judy, that just because they're two straight white men, they're not the exact same person. They don't look anything alike at all.
So feel so erased.
I know
right
they
now.
don't. Shut
This
up,
is
Emma.
this
You
is
know, what side
reverse
are you on?
reverse discrimination that I'm witnessing.
I can't tell who's talking. And shut up. I don't want Emma on anymore.
Wow.
I can't believe she's still there. Sam. Are you in the same room?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. You don't do double shot, like a shot of the two of you?
We never do two shots. This
Yeah.
just two. It would mean when we went during COVID, we moved the cameras right up close, and so now we can't do a two shot. The cameras used to be wider, but I guess it was during COVID that we had to switch it up.
We were
around.
already online.
And
Video
so, and then we've just found this to be. Who cares about a two shot?
Yeah, exactly.
Screw the two shot. I was never a two shot guy.
I mean, we did.
I think you
Weren't?
knew that.
We did we did use a two shot.
It does add
We
variety.
did use a two shot today, but we don't use a wide establishment shot. Let's put it that way.
Okay.
That's old style. That's old
Oh,
school.
okay, I'm so
we don't
sorry,
do
I'm
it.
not
We don't do
cool.
it that way anymore.
All right. So sorry.
So what are you doing the podcast? I mean, you're
I'm
touring.
The podcast, and as you know, you didn't see my show that was based on my book.
I know.
Yes, I
didn't.
can
was
say
supposed
that,
to.
which got an excellent review in the Times.
It did, and also
yes.
an excellent review from my sister.
Yeah, and who knows more about theater than your sister?
I mean, some people, but she knows. She knows a little bit.
Well, and we're planning a tour for 2024.
Oh, so it's going to go on the road.
Yes, it's going to go on the road.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So, which I think is very important because let me tell you something. I can't. These politicians get away with speech that incites violence, that causes death and destruction. They lie. They spread conspiracy theories. And a comedian tells a joke you don't like, and they should just, never be able to perform again.
But is that? I mean, we've had this conversation. But is that still happening?
I don't think I think you have your fans, and but
People
I mean,
know
look
what
what happened with Hassan.
With
Hassan Minaj.
what happened with Hassan?
Oh my God! I should be on this show writing the shit for you that you don't read the friggin' newspaper.
I don't read the style section anymore. What happened?
There was a
Not
profile in the New Yorker
Styles.
about how he
New
supposedly
New York Times.
used like emotional
and the New
truths
Yorker. Yeah.
about things in his stand-up about like he would mention things from his childhood that didn't actually happen.
Bradley,
one
I will
example-
tell the story. I
Yeah,
will
okay,
tell
go
the
ahead.
story.
Sorry.
Okay, since
Sorry,
I
let's
read
hear
both articles. Okay.
Let's see.
So Hassan Minaj, in his act over the years, has told stories that there was one story that there was anthrax that was sent to his house and his daughter was exposed and they had to rush her to the hospital. And this was a big part of his act, and it never happened. And then there was another story
Comedians are now making up stories to be funny?
He was making up stories as being a victim of racism, that a FBI informant had infiltrated his mosque, and then a police officer, when he was a kid, threw him against a car. And all of these stories are made up, but he said they're emotional truths. But I mean, I believe you can say whatever you want, but people who that really happened to were probably like, oh my God, this guy knows what I'm going through. And yet he was making up, but he calls them emotional truths. But you can still say this happened to this guy, or this happened to my friend, or can you believe, so he's in some, lukewarm to hot water.
And all right. And so first off, how did they find out that these weren't true?
Well, the New Yorker journalist who was interviewing him, he admitted it essentially to her, and he said, "But they're emotional truths." But that's like, you're a comedian, or what? You were a comedian, and you're a journalist now. I mean,
I was arguably a comedian, and I'm arguably a journalist. Let's put it that way.
Let's do the quotes. But when you base your act or your persona on social justice or whatever, your politics, or I mean, I found it shocking, and it's one thing to make up, I hate my wife, I hate my kids, that kind of thing. That we all know is just, but to make up these stories like that are so specific and just lie. I mean, how do you trust the guy?
Right. I mean, I would be very skeptical about, and it's emotionally manipulative. I mean, I don't think you should be sent to jail for it.
No, not at all.
But I mean, I think it's just sort of like, it's
the traffic in that stuff of like being like targeted for your political beliefs when people are actually being targeted for that and making basically like comedy, clout from it is not great.
No, it's not. Yeah.
But now, where does that fit in your?
Well, so in my, I really have put a lot of thought into this, and he's allowed to do whatever he wants. He's allowed to say whatever he wants, but he then has to suffer the consequences of that. That's what I believe. You can do whatever you want,
right?
But now you're going to have repercussions because of that. And then people know a little bit more about you. They're going to decide, I don't know if I trust this guy. I don't know if I want to, that's just what happens. And he's up to be the host of the Daily Show, which,
I think would, if I was an executive at Comedy Central, I would be like,
right.
Not sure this is going to work in this instance at this point, because there's a lot of credibility issues there. And I guess people are IMing me about that he told a story about a girl in high school rejecting him for prom because of his race. And he showed a blurry photo, and people figured it out, and then she became the victim of Online
targeting.
That's
and it wasn't even true. It wasn't even true that she didn't go to the prom with him because of his race. It was a made up story. She's actually married to an Indian guy. So, but she was targeted online, and he invited her to the show, and she went thinking they were going to rekindle a friendship, and yet she felt like, oh my God, why am I here when he's sort of...
He sounds like a dick.
Right. But, my manager, they're asking me to go on shows to talk about it. My manager's like, what, you want to get in trouble? You want to, it's like, I can't say anything anymore.
Well, so let me ask you this. Like, so does that cut against like the idea that people would be, I don't know, pissed at, or people would not want to book Jerry Seinfeld because he's insisting that his gay king bit is hilarious and people don't like it anymore? I mean, that?
No, they're not. I don't even think they're comparable. I think this guy, this Hassan, people, that Patriot Act, his show, like people really, I think, will feel betrayed by him. Especially those who felt represented by him.
Yeah.
I agree. But I mean, people are just reacting to what a comedian is doing, right? And at the end of the day, like if we're gonna, like if it's okay for people to react to him for that, and let's take out the high school the prom date, because that there's a real victim there, right? In that instance. But the other stuff, people feel betrayed. They don't like, to be manipulated that way. How is that materially different from like people saying like, I don't, your joke is inappropriate. The
inappropriate and dishonest, like brutally dishonest, I think are two different things, Well,
they are, but I mean, they're being decided by the same.
But don't you think he's considered more than, like, I think Jon Stewart is considered more than a comedian. I mean,
well, yeah.
And the Daily Show, I think Trevor Noah is more than a comedian. George Carlin was a comedian, but for us, he was more than a comedian. And Richard Pryor, they changed the world, I think. But I think that, that journalistic comedian type thing, there has to be an element of trust.
Yeah. I mean, I think, but there's a certain element of trust that's associated with just comedians too, don't you think, or no?
Yeah, but I think it's I think we're on a different level now. Emma, what the fuck?
No, Emma was really offended by what you said to her. She's going to try and regain her composure.
Where did she go?
Back in a minute. She went to.
Did she get up during the last segment?
No. I've never seen her do this.
Really?
I've never seen this type of reaction. Yeah. No, I get what you're saying, but I also think
love to argue, Sam. You just
want
to play devil's advocate.
That's true.
Matt and Bradley both know that I am right. But, these people are probably coming up to him like, oh my God, I was the victim of this and thank you for speaking up. And, I'm sure he's like, you're welcome. And he's, in that.
That's creepy to me. It's super creepy.
Right.
It's super creepy to me.
So there you go.
But, I also like, there's stuff that like Nick DiPaolo does that I find super creepy too.
Oh, please, duh. What happened to him?
Nothing. As far as I can tell, not much, actually.
Really? I mean, he was tolerable. Like, we used to do Tough Crowd, and it was like, oh, shut up, Nick. But now it's gone, oh, my God.
I just remember on Beat Cops, actually. You were never on set at the same time, but, he was in that, too.
Yeah.
And I remember talking to him on the set of Beat Cops, which was in, when did we shoot that? Like 98 or something like that?
Yeah.
And he said to me, I was like, so where are you living? He's like, I come back to New York. You can't, there's no work for a white guy out in LA. And I was like, what? Are you kidding? There's
Oh
never
my
been,
God, that's
there's never been
hilarious.
more white guys being hired in anything ever,
Right.
than it, particularly at that time. Like there was one network, and they had basically the buyers had expanded over the course of like 5 years in that era from essentially 3 networks to 4, 5, 6 networks.
Right.
And I think like Paramount, UPN or whatever they called it, that they were
yeah.
like sort of targeting maybe shows to a black audience. But there was so much work for a white guy. And like the idea that he was like blaming, black people getting hired was, I just found like incredible in that moment.
Yeah. It's some of the stuff that comes out of his mouth is quite shocking.
And now he's working for Crowder.
I know. And
There you
he's
go.
like tripling down on that.
Yep. Well, there you go.
All right.
Wants
to be Rush Limbaugh. What can you do? Yeah.
Well, I mean, you suggesting that there's some type of oxycodone type of situation?
No, I wasn't, Sam. Stop.
Okay,
putting
I'm
words
just
in my
trying to.
mouth.
I'm trying to
Speaking of
tease it out.
oxycodone, where the fuck is Emma?
Emma's trying to get over like what you had said to her.
She just got a phone call from a former prom date.
Yeah, she's Emma's
God,
trying
the
to clean
jokes
up
here
her.
are just flying.
And have you been following the election? I mean, you must be
Oh no,
excited.
I don't. I'm not informed. If it happens, I don't know. I don't know what I'm gonna do. Like my body cannot handle it.
Just the stress
Of that thing. Do you think it's gonna happen? I mean, I can't believe I cannot. It is mind-boggling. Mind-boggling.
Did you ever have a moment where you thought like, okay, fine, we're done with that guy and he's not coming back?
Yeah, I did. I thought that after when Biden won, I thought, okay, good. He's gonna, get us back on track. I cannot believe. First of all, Lauren fucking Boebert, that piece of garbage trash, Marjorie Taylor fuckhead, and Matt fuckhole asswipe Getz, and Jim fucking pedophile piece of shit Jordan, and John fuckhead asshole badneck disgusting Kennedy. Like, these people are fucking disgusting liars. That did you watch the Garland hearings? I mean, they're just classless, grandstanding bullshit artists who are out to destroy the democracy. I can't. People, they don't read. We're so fucking dumb in this country. They're so goddamn dumb. Okay, sorry. It's
That's
so,
all right. No,
I cannot take it anymore. Lauren Boebert is grabbing the guy's cock. He's touching her boobs. She's vaping. And then she's telling people what books their kids should be able to read. And she doesn't even know how to reach. And she's 36 and a grandmother. She is fucking trash. She is a piece of trash. Garbage. Who behaves like that?
It turns out, and to be fair to her, she said that it was a first date. It turns out it's not a first date.
Oh, please. And then she broke up with him because he's a Democrat. And then he has a bar where they have drag queens. How did these people not go, oh my God, she is a piece of shit?
I think that she's probably going to have a real problem getting reelected, I would imagine, in 2024. Because she almost lost in 2022. And this is going to be an on-year election. And I would imagine she has not garnered more support with this unless there is a small Copperfield caucus in her Colorado district.
Right. What about Marjorie Taylor Twat? What about her? She'll get reelected.
She might. I would be surprised if she didn't. I mean, but I mean, who knows? I mean, the real problem is in the short term, the U.S. government's going to shut down, and
Oh my
that's
God!
going to
I know,
mean
and they wanted to.
that's going to
They
mean
wanted
a couple of
to.
million federal workers are
Right.
going to have to work without getting paid. It includes also U.S. Military personnel.
What about Tommy Tub of shit? What about him?
He's still got
Emma,
his
I
blockade.
missed you. I missed you, Emma.
How did you know Emma sat back down? Oh, you can see it. Yeah.
I can see.
Oh, yeah.
I'm here.
Emma,
Yeah, but she's not
well,
there.
I missed you.
I'm sorry, Judy. I'm back
It's all
though.
right.
We
All
don't
right,
take
good.
our normal break is at 1 p.m. So I had to run to the restroom. So sorry.
It's
What did I
okay.
miss?
Well, no, I know how Sam is I know.
The
how he treats-
catheters that we had set up in the in the studio, we had to.
Oh, I went off on the fuckers, and now we're talking about, the government is shutting down, and Tommy Tub of shit fucking.
Tub of shit.
Yeah, I hate them all, Sam. It's like, I'm hearing these people, really grace it's Yom Kippur. I'm supposed to be like compassion and grace. I can't have compassion for these people who are willfully ignorant.
Do you fast? Will you fast on Monday?
Of course. I'm full of guilt. Well,
Yeah,
you
I
won't
will.
fast, right?
No, I always fast.
Are you working?
No, I don't work on Yom Kippur.
But you don't fast. You don't do anything. You don't sit there and think about.
No,
what
I
do
do
wanna
fast,
change?
and
I love you.
Saul and
I love
I are
you.
going to Kol Nidre services.
I
and,
love Saul. I love
Dude.
that name so much.
And you've never met him though.
No,
And how are your kids doing? Good, right?
they're fantastic. They're both fantastic. And Ben, my younger one, Henry's working. He works with kids with behavioral problems because he was one and he knows how to handle them. So
Oh, well, that's
he's
good.
always he's like, Mommy, I know exactly, because I did the same shit. And he's great. And then he's waiting for the strike to be over because he works in production. And then Ben is in his last year at Trinity. He's the captain of the basketball team, and he's getting recruited to play professionally in Israel.
Really?
Yes,
Wow.
Israel. He played in the Maccabee games, and they're recruiting him.
That's Jesse Waters and
Tucker Carlson.
Tucker
I
Carson's
know.
alma mater.
Okay, he's there for basketball. Shut up.
I understand.
I can't believe it. He talks about he told me the cars there. These kids have it's unbelievable, the money at that school.
I said this about Trinity when I was looking at, schools to go to. I had some big book and it said most conservative liberal arts
Yes.
college, #1, Trinity.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, he's on the basketball team, and they're not really conservative.
Yeah, there you go.
Um,
Right.
what else you got going on? Anything else that we should be talking about? What's happening with the podcast season? Who can we
The
look forward to?
podcast, Kill Me Now. This week I have Dee Snyder from Twisted Sister. This
Oh
week
my
and
God.
next week. He wrote this great book called Frats, but his life is so fascinating. So yeah, this week and next week, we had such a good conversation.
Wow.
See, I get people on my podcast, Sam.
I have no doubt.
Yeah. But
And-
I must say, even though I hate saying this, well, it's probably because of Emma, Matt, and Bradley, but I get so many people at my shows who tell me they heard me on the Majority Report.
and why do you hate that?
No, I hate telling you that because of your
I see.
ego
I understand.
issue.
And it's that's what I go around. That's one of
Yeah,
the.
it's so great.
So folks can go see you this tonight.
Tonight, 7:00, baby, at the Arlington Draft House.
And are you
tomorrow
doing
at
multiple
7 to
shows
9:30.
and
Tomorrow,
two shows tomorrow
7
night?
to 9:30, and then I get a drive home for the Kol Nidre.
There you go.
And then I have other dates, like I'm in Florida and Fort Lauderdale on October 21st. I mean, I could go on. And guess what is happening on November 20th?
Um,
I'm getting my knee replaced.
oh no.
The other one. I already had one done. Now I'm getting the other one done.
Well, at least you know what to
It's
expect.
shit. It's shit, Sam.
I'm sorry.
Thank
Sorry to
you,
hear that.
Emma.
You got arthritis?
Oh, it's beyond.
Yeah.
Boner on boner, baby.
Judy Gold, it is always a pleasure. It was
I
too
love
long.
you. I know.
Uh,
Sam, I gotta be a regular. Don't you think, Emma?
You are a regular.
Whatever.
No, you are.
We'll
We
make
just
you
haven't-
more
we haven't
regular.
Done, we haven't
Yeah,
done.
Emma. She
I
Yeah,
knows.
see, I'm sucking up to you, Judy, 'cause you got
Feldman's
mad at me
completely
earlier.
overdue.
Yeah, Feldman's overdue.
Kindler, we've only had on like I think twice this year. I don't know what happened.
We
This
need
is like
Feldman
a
on to
lost
talk
year.
about the
Sam,
strikes.
You're abandoning us.
No, I don't. We don't. Even, we haven't
Let me
been
tell
doing
you
a second
something.
guess.
Comedians
I'm-
are old news. Union leaders are the new hotness. So.
Yeah.
Shut fuck up. Okay? You know, I just want you to know I will be institutionalized if that motherfucker. How about how he doesn't even go to the all right, I know you have
Just
to
make
go,
sure
but-
they have Wi-Fi at that institution, will you, please?
Yeah, I will. But I'm just letting you know that he's such a fucking coward, liar, piece of shit. And Jared Kushner, what the fuck with the $2 billion and fuckface Orange fuckface can't even show up at the debate because he's such a fucking piece of shit coward. Ugh.
Well, Judy, he's 60% in the latest Quinnipiac poll.
I can't.
He's on a record pace for contested primary in terms of the biggest leads ever kind of tabulated.
I can't.
What is that?
I
What is
can't.
that? What do you think of that, though? What do you think of America when you hear that?
Emma, you were in the bathroom,
Oh,
but I'll tell you right now.
oh, we did this
I
already.
don't even, there's no fucking words. There's no
Oh.
words for this. How do you, he tried to overthrow democracy. There was an insurrection. There was no peaceful transition of power. He is a fucking liar, a fucking rapist, a fucking predator. He's dishonest. He's a mob boss. What the fuck is going on with these people?
We'll have to wait until your next appearance to answer that question. Judy Gold.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
We'll put a link to tickets in Arlington, and folks come out and see you tonight and tomorrow night.
Thank you, Sam. Thank you, Sam.
Always a
Emma,
pleasure.
Matt,
Love you, Judy.
Bradley, I
Thank
love
you so much
all.
for coming on.
Mwah.
All right, bye-bye. Happy New Year.
So long. Happy New Year. Lashana Tiva.
All right, folks, we're going to take a quick break, head into the fun half of the program. Just a reminder, it's your support that makes this show possible. You can become a member at jointhemajorityreport.com. When you do, you not only get the free show free of commercials, you not only get the fun half, you not only get to I Am the Show and the fun half, but you also get to support the show and allow us to survive and thrive. Jointhemajorityreport.com. Also, don't forget justcoffee.coop. Fair trade coffee, tea, and chocolate. Use the coupon code majority. You get 10% off. Great coffee. You can get the Majority Report blend there. Emma, ESPN special NFL episode yesterday.
Oh yeah, we're all over it. We gave our picks against the spread. I'm bouncing back in a real way this week. I feel it in my bones. YouTube.com/ESPN show.
And Matt, Left Reckoning?
Yeah, Left Reckoning. We had Matt McManus on to talk about the history of conservatism and talked a little bit about, just having friends that are billionaires who love independent media and give you $5,000, just as an introduction at patreon.com/Left Reckoning. And if you're a billionaire who wants to pay David and I to talk about like Jordan Peterson and the UAW strike, patreon.com/Left Reckoning.
All right, folks. See you in the fun half.
You are in for it.
All right, folks. 646-257-3920. See you in the fun half.
Are you ready?
Who sent us this?
Alpha males are back. Boy is back. And the alpha males are back.
Just as delicious as you could imagine.
The alpha males are back. Boy is back. And the alpha males are back.
Just wanna degrade the white man.
Alpha males are back.
I take all of it in my throat.
Alpha males are back. back.
Snowflake says what?
The alpha males are back.
You are a madman!
And the alpha males are back.
Oh no, Sam Seder! What a fucking nightmare!
Bring back DJ.
Yeah, or a couple of them. Just put them in rotation.
DJ Danner.
Well, the problem with those is they're like 45 seconds long, so I don't know if they're enough of a break.
That's fucking nonsense.
You see white people doing drugs that look worse than normal white people, and all white people look disgusting.
And the alpha males.
Psych. Fuck them. Fuck them. Oh. Snowflake says what? Snowflake says what?
A hell of a lot of bank. A hell of a lot of bank. A hell of a lot of bank. Okay, I'm making stupid money. Hell of a lot of bank. A hell of a lot of bank.
All lives matter. Have you tried doing an impression on a college campus?
I think that there's no reason why reasonable people across the divide can't all agree with this. Psych.
And the alpha males are back. And the Africans are black African. And the alpha males are black. And the Africans are back.
When you see Donald Trump out there, doesn't a little part of you think that America deserves to be taken over by jihadists? Keeping it 100.
Can't knock the hustle.
Come on! Fuck 'em. Things I do for the bigger game plan. By the way, it's my birthday! Happy birthday to me, Jew boy! I have a thought experiment for you.
And the alpha males are back. Africans are black. Alpha males are black. Africans are back.
Come on! Come on! Someone needs to pay the price for blasphemy around here.
I am a total pussy.
We are back. Emma Vigeland, Sam Seder, Fun Half, Casual Friday. Reed and I am Steve.